Good people, here we are, 2025. It's January. It is the 11th, Saturday the 11th. It's about 4:40, maybe 2-3 hours before you guys, 363, retake the stage here at the Alma Cafe. Some of us were fortunate enough to see the pre-festive season show, and we'll talk a bit about that. But generally, welcome to both of you. John and Gus, welcome 363. Two of the 363 boys.
Today it's 362.
Ah.
Right.
We're missing a member.
1, 2. Testing 1, 2.
1, 2. Where's the third?
3's not there.
3 is not available.
I see what you did there.
But Dion will be here tonight playing with you. Tell us a bit about how you went about, John, recruiting 2 new members to the 363, and what took you down that road of going back to the future?
Two-part answer. The short version is a mutual friend of all of ours, actually, Ashton Gardner, who is coming here tonight, said to me a year ago, "What are you doing playing Bryan Adams covers in the corner of a pub?" When you're the guy who wrote these Tree songs, which had spoken to him so many years ago. So I thought to myself, that's quite a good point, actually. And Ashton has a interesting history with 363. So it was a beautiful thing to come from him, that something stirred the water with me and made me think about the idea of getting back on a stage and playing these songs I'd written so long ago. So I'm glad it came from him. And then I said to Ashton, "Well, do you know any drummers and bass players?" Because I had no clue. I mean, I've been living in Cape Town for 2 years. I don't know many musicians yet. And there's lots of great players, but how do you find their, Ashton recommended this man next to me, Mr. Gus Warden. And here we are.
At your service.
At your service.
How do you know Ashton?
Ashton, before COVID, left a whole bunch of studio gear at my music school.
As Ashton does.
As Ashton does. He didn't trust anyone, so I proved the trust. Keeping some really awesome gear. Studio monitors and...
Do you still have it?
the lost tapes. I must check, I don't know. And so I think about 8 months before I got a call from John, Ashton messaged me and he said, "Hey, would you consider getting back into the live game again? Would you play with this guy, John?"
Because you hadn't played for a long time, right?
Right. I was doing a lot of work and then I got out of it just before COVID.
Oh.
And so you've actually brought me out of retirement, John.
I'm going to step in for a second just so that people get an idea of Gus. Certainly from what I know, I mean, I've known Gus since I was a pimply teenager. He was a teenager at my high school and he was the drum teacher there. And then played for many years behind Arno Carstens.
Yeah, that's
as
right.
far as I know. So, absolute industry veteran,
Mm-hmm.
played at the top of the kind of game behind Arno. Who was the bass player who was playing? It would have been you and
David,
yes, on trumpet and keys.
Trumpet, right.
Yeah,
Was
so
he playing
part of
bass
that trio.
He was doing keyboard and bass synth on his...
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
He
That's
Arno Carstens.
the trio.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
I saw
That's
that
right.
a good number of times.
I've got
That was a
an
good show.
embarrassing Gus story. Can I jump in there?
Yeah, sure.
He's dead.
Because you mentioned Gus playing with Arno, right?
Okay.
Oh, I know what he's going to say.
This is bad. Let it be bad.
This is
Go.
bad, man.
This is great for me.
Actually, you tell it.
Please let's remember it's a family show.
This is somehow I was booked for a session gig. A lovely dude called Art Matthews, who I also loved, growing up watching him as an idol, and so jumped at the chance to play a bit of his music. And I pitch up at the Quicksilver store at some mall somewhere,
Right.
and he had a bass player. Is this the story you were going to tell? And so he had a bass player, and his name was John Ellis, my other hero. And so John and I were both session
you can play
musos at one stage.
We played a gig together, and it was so memorable that when we met a year ago today, I went, "Hi, I'm John." He goes, "Yeah, I know, we played together."
What does that tell you about the aging process, John? That's the question.
Hi, I'm John.
Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you.
They've shaken hands.
What are you doing in my lounge?
Neuroplasticity
hilarious.
is a thing. So
We played a gig together.
I quickly forgave him, and
Yeah.
now we're good friends.
Terrible. Hey, I'm John. Nice to meet you.
I think one more character that's worth mentioning that you brought up as well is Ashton Gardner, who is he's a character on the Cape Town scene. If you haven't watched him play his own music before, I would recommend that you do. He's quite possibly one of the most gifted songwriters out there, and definitely the weirdest.
Oh yeah,
the strangest of the bunch.
Well, it's only because he comes from another dimension.
Planet, yeah.
And thank God, because he brings news from other worlds that we desperately need.
Yeah.
Right? And he's been like, I've known him since '98.
Oh, really?
Nothing's changed. Yeah. And God bless him.
Yeah. He's a genuine eccentric, oddball.
Sounds like it's the type of character we must invite onto the podcast.
Yeah, he'd fit in perfectly. Yeah.
I mean, we'd need 4 hours to just get his name out of him.
Talking of names, the third name missing from today is Dion. Tell us a bit about Dion and what his background is. I know
Dion Knipe.
Dion the Knife.
And the reason he's in this band now is because of this guy. So you can tell me about Dion.
Right, so at the end of that whole conversation that John and I had a year ago, he said, we need a bass player. And I said to him, like Ashton said to him, well, there's this one guy you got to call. And so I said, there's this bass player you got to call. His name's Dion. And he called him, and I've been friends with Dion for about 10 years. And we had never played together, in fact. So
are you sure? Because you and I played together.
John had probably played with him for 5-10 years. And
maybe we had. Maybe Dion doesn't want to come clean when we played together. But and it was a beautiful, synergetic moment. We came together and we played a few rock and roll, and we were jamming mostly, so that was it. And then since then, Dion has recommended a few sound guys that have actually fit perfectly. So it's just unfolded organically, hasn't it?
Yeah. What's cool about Dion is he plays with Majorzy at the moment, so he's plugged into a different energy on the other side of the age spectrum. Where I'm pushing 52, he's retreating from 34 or something, right? And he sees a segment of the music industry that I don't. 63's now, after all these years, is more of a legacy thing, you know, like after 25 years of success, what is success? Whereas Majorzy and the crowd is like having the moment.
It's in it right now.
So Dion brings awareness of that, which is really cool for me, just to go, oh, there's people out there, you know.
And this is how to do it in 2025 in terms of reach and expand.
But Dion's got a lot of youthful energy, and he loves playing these songs, and we're both grateful to have him around. Not right now, though.
Well, that was very obvious. Let's go back to late December. You played, I think it was maybe your second show ever as that lineup of the group. I think you'd said before we started recording, John, you'd been working at it for a good period before that.
Yeah.
But tell us about how it was to be up here on this stage, which you've got to know very well, with a new group of friends, of musicians, and playing songs which obviously mean so much to you, and the response that you got that evening.
Well, the reason 63 got to play Unplugged at the Alma is because of Jono. So Jono phones me and goes, have you thought about this idea? And I hadn't. And over the years, or the early years of Tree, we'd always liked the idea of Unplugged, but we never could get it together for some reason. It never, ever happened. So when we played December last year, it literally was the first time Tree had put on an Unplugged concert anywhere in the world.
That's quite cool.
Yeah. And it was Jono's idea, and what we discovered rehearsing for it was there's possibly a future in rehearsing an electric band acoustically in a small environment. Learning arrangements of songs acoustically is quite interesting, because you can do things in that space that sometimes get lost in the noise of an electric rehearsal. So it was quite an eye-opening thing preparing for this gig, right? We worked out a couple of new songs, just acoustic guitar, bass, and percussion that we would have been fine with it electrically. But there's something about the space and the silence that comes with an Unplugged stuff. You go, oh wow, you discover nuances of the song you didn't realize before. So that was a good, interesting prep for we discovered by mistake. And then so then we got to play finally at this coveted venue, the famous, prestigious Alma Cafe.
Full house that night.
See, Tree 63 started in 97. And all those years we had we travelled and played. We had a great time, but we never got to play here. Even
I don't think we
I was gonna say
existed
you
by
only
the time you
2007,
guys closed
but
down.
eventually, no. When did Alma start?
We only started doing music sort of in its infancy in 2009, and it really started becoming a thing in 2011, 2012.
Yeah, so we wouldn't have been able to play then. But even then, after I could have done something. And I always heard about the Alma, but it felt like it's in Cape Town. And I was based in Durban, and it was too much.
It's a long walk.
So yeah, it's a long walk. So to bring that here finally was a great feeling for me personally. So
It was so nice to hear those songs, and I guess the question for the musicians, the three of you, is that idea of taking what could be quite a complex song in terms of its production, like a million lights, breaking that down into an acoustic arrangement.
Yeah.
Probably still shows the quality of the song and the ability to interpret based on a handful of chords and an arrangement, as opposed to the glitz and the glamour of a production studio.
Well, I think that's the point artistically of an unplugged session, is taking your songs and stripping them, right, and finding out if there is actually a song at the core of of the arrangement. Often you find out, there isn't, and it needs all the bells and whistles to survive, and that's okay. But you're in trouble then, I think, as a writing person. All of us know about the craft of songwriting. It's a different thing to crafting something in the studio with synths and things. That's great. But crafting a song with all these Tree songs were written on an acoustic guitar and 6 strings and a notepad. Mainly because I couldn't afford anything else.
I think it is very much worth noting as well that the band's always been, on the one hand, that most basic of ensembles, and on the other hand, when you get it right, the most complete of ensembles, which is a drums, bass, and guitar trio. Mm-hmm. Because if you are playing in that and you have a song, it's going to work, because the drums have their lane, the guitar has its lane, and the bass has its lane, and then there's the vocal that's going to determine whether or not the song works or doesn't. So Tree always had that thing where, by virtue of the limitation, there was sort of the self-limitation that was placed on the presentation of the material. The songs were always going to come to the fore, because there's not much else going on.
Yep,
you could play.
You could design.
You could play well, and you could be great players, but a trio, we're not in the late 60s. Like, no one's coming to watch Clapton play guitar for 20 minutes anymore, and it hasn't been like that since the 60s, really. So Tree, as a band of the 90s into the 2000s, was always a song band.
Yeah, except I agree with you.
Except you used to play 20-minute guitar solo, probably.
No.
I'm sure he did,
I bet he's done a couple.
Probably he was throwing shapes and everything.
No, the point that, in fact, I can play 20-minute solos, but I always wondered why, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're both guitar players. You know what it's like in terms of a musician wanting to stretch out and enjoy the moment for 20 minutes. But at some point, it has to serve the song. I'm an old-fashioned song guy. I grew up on the Beatles, not later things. Yeah. So for me, a 3-minute pop song is like is a craft worth
art form.
An art form, yeah. And I love prog, and I love Zeppelin, and I love 20-minute solos. But I'll come down on the side of, is there a song in there or not? And I think that's kind of why Nirvana had such a status, is that in the midst of all that legendary noise was a songwriter, right? Somebody who knew how to craft a 3-minute pop song.
I think U2 is also a good example.
They're a bit left field. Who's your favorite songwriter? So do you have famous writers?
Sure, must be Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definite Beatles fan.
Yeah.
And then someone like Matthew Bellamy. But
Muse.
But that's from, in my mind, the same strand.
Yeah.
But back to the trio conversation, it's all about the triangulation. And the fact that we were able to break it down to a simple form here is amazing, because it gives us a little bit of wider lane.
Oh, yeah, true.
And as an improv artist, it's an amazing experience to play the song in your head and and this is what I did a lot with the previous artists that I work with. But every time you're interpreting it completely differently, and that is the aesthetic of the performance in my mind.
Yeah.
So it's you got many layers. You got the, what you were talking about, the 60s trio, power trio, and the beauty is we can take it wherever we want. So
Especially if the singer forgets where he is.
yeah, 100%.
Well, we saw a bit of that as well, if I remember.
But on the tail end of that, I just want to highlight that this is no normal trio, that you've got a lead vocalist who is also the electric guitar / guitar soloist.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And when I was watching Tree, I thought, I've always seen it the other way around. Maybe the bass player is like a very Sting Police type thing.
Oh yeah.
The bass player is the vocalist because, no one in history can sing lead lines and shred the
guitar.
Shred and
so
also
there he is, and he's sitting right next to me.
Can we also just say, in defense of the guitar playing world, is that rarest of breeds, which is a rhythm guitarist par excellence. Because having played with John quite a bit,
Yeah.
you don't need a drummer, no offense, but you don't need to have a drummer when John's playing, especially acoustic guitar.
Really?
Well, no. You're like a fucking freight train, mate.
Well,
Which is amazing.
someone once said a guitar, I think it might have even been someone as unbelievable as Eddie Van Halen. Guitar is a rhythm instrument.
Yeah.
First, we can solo on it, and people do, and it's incredible. But essentially, it's a box with strings on that you hit really hard, and you create that sense of rhythm from
Percussion,
it. Right?
yeah.
You don't even
Yeah.
have to fret the fretboard to get its rhythm going.
Yeah.
I suppose it goes back to that whole thing of skiffle back in
Well,
the day with
exactly. That's
the
what skiffle
quarrymen
was.
and whatever, banging away on a
Man.
soapbox and
Quarry
a,
man.
And I don't know about you as a guitar player, or you growing up playing. As a kid, you learn you want to emulate your heroes, and you come up with people like Eddie Van Halen that you idolize, and you think as a teenager, playing guitar it means doing that, and it can be, but for me it was more like, oh, that's the icing on the cake. The cake is important.
Yeah.
Right. Getting the ingredients right is actually more important
cake's
than the
always
icing,
important.
right?
Always bring your own cake.
There you go.
95% of the song is playing the song.
It's baking.
Yeah, 5% of it is like maybe getting
Icing.
to blow your chops.
The
It
Cake
is-
Podcast by True 63.
But
Cake
it
by
is
the
a-
ocean.
it is a big deal, right? You don't get a lot of these dudes around who can start off by writing the song, then play the song to an exceptional standard, also sing to an exceptional standard, and then of course the thing that I think doesn't really get talked about too much because it gets lost on all the other stuff. You're also a very entertaining frontman.
In a good way, or
Stagecraft, right?
Stagecraft, like
come on.
you perform, you entertain people, you make them laugh, you make them feel comfortable, you make them feel at home, you bring them into the space, and my sense is the bigger the stage, the more you clown.
It's not clowning; it's professional idiocy. No, that's interesting because I'm an exceptional introvert, always was, and as I get older, I get sort of more. There's a place I get to on stage where I'm okay to be there, but off stage, I'd love to go quietly, hide away, and read a book.
Sure.
Which is interesting because people like that you don't think will have some kind of ability to
Switch off.
be on a stage and entertain people. But my father's a member of Parliament, and he stirred a lot of nonsense in Parliament by being that guy. And maybe I get it from him, a little bit of playing to the crowd, But my bottom line is, when we're up on stage, when any band's up on stage, they're there for the sake of the audience, not the other way around. That's my personal take. We're there to take the audience somewhere and go somewhere together, because the audience takes us somewhere too, right? So I'm just the driver, but we're all in the car.
And people have chosen to that car.
Yeah,
And
if
they're there for
if they don't-
everybody-
if they don't cancel the day before.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Right, so I've just been driving a long time. That's all, and apparently I'm not a very good driver. Ask Cape Town drivers, John Ellis on the
you
road.
do have a thing about 60 kilometers an hour by all accounts.
63 kilometers an hour.
63 kilometers an hour.
363. See what you did there.
I see what you did
See
there.
what you did there.
Segway. Where does the name come from?
Well,
Let's ask Gus. Do you know where the name came from?
I would
Gus?
also like to know.
Well, John, my mom gave it to me.
It's your middle name.
John.
Those KZN
Tree
oaks, they're
Ellis.
very, very far out there. You know, John
I believe it's
363 Ellis.
Psalm? It comes from
Yeah, from the Psalms.
Psalms, that's right, yeah. I believe it's this book that Hemingway wrote.
On page 63 of Hemingway's Psalms.
And it was so good it got entered into scripture.
Written
Any
on
questions?
paper, which comes from a tree. Yeah, no, this all makes sense.
Originally, tree was tree. And the fact that we tree 63 is still to this day a little bit of a sore point for me. But I've learned to accept it. Tree, I just called it band tree. I like the fact that it was short and sweet and it's tree. Plus, tree is a beautiful image and metaphor for God. The shelter and the shade, the protection, the growth, this beautiful tree. For a bunch of reasons. I mean, scripturally, in the Bible, there's lots of mentions of different kinds of trees. The Garden of Eden, the fact that the cross was referred to as a tree. There's a lot of imagery there. And then we were doing our second album. We called it 63 after Psalm 63, which had a particular resonance for that album, the writing and all. And on the side of the CD, on the spine, it said Tree 63, right?
Oh.
So we get to America in 2000.
Lol.
And we get to America in 2000, and we're Tree, and we tried to register Tree.com, and there was a punk band in Boston called Tree, and their website, they already had Tree.com, and all their website was just pictures of them going, and they refused to hand over. The lawyers got involved and tried to get the domain, and they wouldn't release it, so we had to change our name, and there was a bunch of back and forth, and eventually one of the record label guys looked at it and said, well, look, Tree 63 on the CD. Yeah. And we went, okay. And it was always, to me, it was always plan B. And I'll to this day, I'll always feel like we're Tree, really. But there you go.
You certainly sound like in the US, at the very least, that you had the longer career of the two.
Well, yeah.
More successful.
People only
the
ever heard of
two.
Tree 63. But to me, there's another identity that's stronger underneath it. The tree, the deep roots, right? Get what I'm doing? Roots, the branches, right? The leaves.
You've had this conversation before.
Yes.
Is there a Highway 63 in the States?
Highway
There is actually.
62.
62.
No, what's
66.
the song? 66. Highway
See what
66.
you did there.
Oh, we've got Route 62 here. And there's
Yes.
Highway 66.
Yes.
The road
Same
less
difference.
taken.
Yeah.
Places
And
that take
And
But
you're
then-
tree
places
number
never seen.
63 down Highway
Yeah,
66.
we go to the Joshua Tree National Park and look for tree number
on the
63.
right,
yeah. No, but we also get all the jokes over the years. Do you guys need a branch manager? And have you guys put down your roots? Have you turned over a new leaf? You know, all this.
When are you planning
you
to
sure
leave
these weren't-
the United States?
That's good
a good
songwriting
one.
material, I think.
Maybe.
Are you sure these weren't all in your mind, these dad jokes that you're giving us?
I had loved to say yes, but it's been many years and I've heard them all.
but I mean, we had a joke which references back to our second ever podcast, where we were going to start a duo called the Johns.
Yeah.
And write a bunch of toilet-related pun songs.
Right.
Remember that?
No, you were going to write it.
No, we were going to write them together.
I was just
but
in the background.
I think you can. Maybe you should consider doing a tree album
Yes.
with lots of root, branch, and leaf puns. I mean, you've been talking about.
I'd like to
wanting
thank you
do
all
a
for
new
coming to this
album.
podcast today. It's now over.
I think you're onto something here. I'm with you.
Yeah, boy.
I'm with you.
Twig. No. That's
What?
No. Twig used to be a verb.
Twiggy.
No, twig. I just twigged something.
Oh, twig.
Yeah.
As in twig. Twig. I understand.
I deeply apologize for that terrible, terrible dad joke.
And
Maybe
now
There's
for
more,
something.
there's more to come.
And
now for something completely different.
Maybe
Yeah.
if you put it into isiXhosa or Sizulu, then people won't twig.
Oh my!
Jeez.
I see Gus has really cottoned onto this idea.
He's
Embraced it.
really
He's
twigged. Yeah.
Yeah, he's really got it.
Right. I think we should move on from this conversation.
I would like to. There's a story that I would like to hear. I know you've got some stuff prepped,
Sure.
so I don't want
No,
to
it's all-
derail
it's all you.
completely.
It's all
Okay,
you.
fantastic. I read your blog post on September 2001 in New York.
Mm-hmm.
That was a crazy story. Would you like to share that in 3,000 words or less?
When I was 7, I said to my mother.
No, but that's a crazy story, dude. Like,
So, Okay, so yes, we were in New York City on the day of 9/11. We landed at JFK the night before, September 10th. Jet lagged to death.
Yeah.
Went to bed at 6 o'clock in the evening. Couldn't stay awake. Woke up early in the morning, like 6ish, to go down to the World Trade Center because I'd been up there a month before in August. I've got pictures of myself in Durban North slip slops, standing up against those famous windows of the World Trade Center, looking out over the view. And we'd said to the rest of the band, you need to come, it's best for you in New York City, blah, blah, blah. Woke up at 6 in the morning, went down to the lobby, Midtown, knocked on doors, where are you guys? You're late. One of the road manager was still late, still not there. So we went back up to his room, knocked on the door, we're waiting for you. And he opens the door on his towel and he goes, come and look at this on the TV. And we went, what? Come on, we need to go. He says, come see this. And on the TV, the first plane had just hit. And I still remember standing there counting the stories. It looked like just like a small hole in this building. It looked like maybe a small plane had flown into the.
Which I think it happened before. Something.
Yeah,
something.
It looked like a
I think
terrible
that was
tragedy.
the Empire State.
Yeah. No, that was a gorilla.
So you.
So then, while we're watching, the smoke
Derails his own story completely.
Watching smoke billowing out of the first tower. I don't know if you guys saw it, but the second plane came out the right-hand side of the screen, and the second tower exploded on the left, and we saw it happen live.
Yeah.
And then that moment you go, oh my gosh, this is real.
Everything's
the world's
changed,
just changed. So we were 45 streets up from there, Midtown, mid-Manhattan, and obviously the whole city shut down in a flash. And later on in the day, I saw, you remember those pictures of those guys covered head to toe in white dust? Saw those guys arriving Midtown, they'd walked up from. But to be there was still the most surreal thing of my life. And the next day, or 2 days later, when we realized the whole music industry had shut down, the city had shut down, everything was done. America shut down. We had to be in Florida at the end of the week, so we thought, well, I'll just leave if we can get out of Manhattan, which we managed to do. And you drive through New Jersey parallel to the Hudson River, parallel to Manhattan, all the way down, right? It's heading south. And I can still see in my mind's eye the end of the island on fire, that huge plume of smoke just billowing over the rivers for miles as we drove past it. And it was such a surreal turning point in Western history to have been of all places. But then again, in 97, I happened to be in London just when Diana died. And then we were here, and this other horrible thing happened. And then I suddenly started thinking, I need to stop traveling.
I didn't want to say it.
Were you also there when he landed the plane on the Hudson?
When they filmed the moon landing, no.
He was just a teenager then.
Maybe the name of the band should be Wag the Johns.
Wag the Johns. But no, it was a rough day. And
yeah, no, that's hectic, man.
so it makes you to be in the center suddenly for a brief by accident in the center of the universe for a split second.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen often, you know.
No.
And I remember the rest of that whole tour. There was that haunted sense of. I mean, the whole country was just so. Do you remember? It was such a strange place to be.
Was they saying Afrikaans demakar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except one thing. I'll say one thing. South Africans were used to that kind of stuff. Unfortunately. And Americans were completely blown out of the water. They'd never seen anything like this before. It was terrible. And South Africans in the van, the 63 van, were going, yeah, it's terrible. It really is. But in Africa, you kind of get almost immune. Not inured to it, but you get a sense of daily national tragedy.
High level of terrible trauma.
Yeah, daily national tragedy is not far off all the time.
Well, it's called hypernormalization.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
And I mean, all three of you would have lived through the transition here in South Africa, that whole post-94 election, which, you know, from the precipice to a hope. And I know you've written many songs about the new South Africa, John, and, you know, that's, I suppose, a positive as well. So you're talking about the Princess Diana, you're talking about those two global events, which probably overshadow most things in our lifetime.
Yeah, yeah.
But that one, maybe I'm just going to ask all three of you to go back. I mean, I missed that transition April election by 4 or 5 months before I came out here.
Yeah.
I mean, if we take you back there to that period, and I remember talking with the Vonderboom guys, where they were saying how what an amazing sort of liberation it was as a musician to have gone from sort of this very conservative mindset to you can be whoever you want to be.
Yeah.
You can define your genre, your music you play, the music you listen to. It's not going to be censored. It's not going to be you're not going to be judged by that. I mean, how was that for particularly the two of you who are older than say Jono?
I'm going to remove myself from the conversation. I was 4 years old.
Yeah,
so there you go. So we'll talk about your experience maybe last.
I'll go. I don't want to name drop after someone else shares their story, but my first gig was playing. I was the token white guy in a at a ANC Youth Rally League on the
ANC Youth League.
That's cool.
Youth League Rally.
Yeah.
I've been telling that story wrong.
No.
It's your version. You stand by it.
It's my truth. My mom was a nurse. My dad was a lecturer. Being part of the whole, getting them back. And I got to work with Arno, who refused to sing in Afrikaans.
Did he?
That's why they were a English rock band from Stellenbosch, Springbok New Girls. And so that golden thread has kind of framed my life. I work in education now as well, and that's been absolutely amazing. Learning how cyclical, African music is, improvised music. Those are the kind of things that I want to do to make a difference. So, it's difficult, but I think we're making full circle, and I hope that Tree is, in the future has got a part to play, because I've seen how effective musicians and songs can be.
For sure, within this whole space and transition period. Yeah. John, your thoughts around that period and what it meant for you as a youngster, and what it then started to open doors in terms of possibility?
In a weird way, in a good and bad way, music's a bubble, right? And you can be invested in this bubble of writing and performing and playing music so deeply that you almost lose track of the world around you, until literally a plane crashes into the building next to you and you go, oh, there's a world out there. Entertainment industry is very insulated. So my early years of playing music were all during apartheid, but you didn't really notice because you were trying to learn the latest Eddie Van Halen song. You'd put your head down and just almost did not stop paying attention to the world around you, and suddenly this massive event happens. I remember being on some band on tour at the time in Joburg and driving through, and there was the brand new flag was on sale everywhere. You're paying sort of mild attention, but you're really focused on, do I have enough strings for tonight? I only wish later that I'd be
the
paying
real
more
questions.
attention. Yeah, I wish we'd paying. But I remember after, you're right, 95, 96, suddenly the air felt different. Like there was everyone felt a little bit more excited. And you realize how oppressed we'd all been during apartheid, not just a certain segment of this population. Everyone lost in apartheid, even white people, right? That's the nature of oppression or tyranny. No one wins. And when we suddenly were free, and the spirit of rock and roll gets loose too, and rock and roll is such a free format, a form of human expression, and to use that as a powerful tool to say something, that becomes exciting too, right? Suddenly, and we all know the history of South African music, it kind of almost blossomed in, right? 95, 96, all these bands, suddenly
scene.
Urban Creep,
Barney
Squeal,
Simon
Arapaho.
absolutely
right?
slaying it on his radio show with everything.
So it just loosed everyone psychologically, subconsciously, and then later consciously.
And I mean, 363, I think you said, sort of originated around that late 90s.
Yeah.
First album 2000?
No, 97 and then
97.
99 and yeah.
And I mean, how were you inspired by that in terms of saying, I can, like, this is it, I'm going to make a living out of this, I'm going to change it from being, how did it transform?
It was subconscious. It was just a case of, but you suddenly felt a little bit more enabled maybe, or bolder to go, I'll try this. Whereas before, it was always, no, it's army and a job.
Right.
in the apartheid years, and then suddenly it was like, well, there's possibilities now, you know. But some of them, like Jono, being only 4 at the time, your inheritance later, 10 years later, would have been that became your normal. Whereas for us, we had that transition time.
There was a before. There was a notable before
and same
after,
with the music industry. That changed in my lifetime, whereas you may have inherited it, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember, you recorded an album on tape and released it on vinyl. That was the norm.
Yeah.
That's and whereas now it's all open.
Well, I mean, now there's been another massive shift. Obviously, we've spoken at length about the nature of the, creation of music, the distribution of music, the balance of power, and all of that kind of stuff. I remember just life felt exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was because I was 4 and 5 years old, or because we were winning the World Cup, or because apartheid ended.
How
But it
old are
was
you
a
at the
very exciting time for like 1994, 1995. Like just as I started becoming a little bit conscious, that first sort of little spark of like, oh, I'm alive on a planet and I can run around and do things.
It's a good planet. Yeah.
And 1995 was insane.
Yeah.
Like it was so cool.
How old were you at the time?
I was 11.
Yeah, I was 20. Something, I don't know.
And the youngest in my family, like I said, my mom was a nurse, so she had all the tactile experience of what was happening. There was the sense that everyone was stepping out, ready to say stuff, most of this excitement, but also the older generation, the baby boomers as I call them, they weren't saying a lot, especially in my family, in my sort of circles. So I almost had to learn it, and then it had to become my own reality. So I got to a point there was such discord between what you should do and what's happened. I didn't really understand it. I just kind of turned it off, forgot about it, and I just kind of went, what Jono was saying, went with my intuitions, went with my gut, and ended up, just kind of being most honest and sort of authentic and transparent.
Yeah, whereas someone like me, I sorry to interrupt, but that makes a good point. I remember not being able to do that. And having to learn that as an slightly older person. So which is still why it took me so long. I grew up quite reticent in writing. You can't say that. It's taken me years to figure that out. Whereas maybe for you it's a bit more like breathing. Interesting.
Interesting stories, and I want to take you, Gus, back again to that night when you and I met just as I think John was pulling into the venue. And
late.
I said,
Was I late?
I never did get to see 363. You were late. Never did get to see 363 in the original incarnation. You said, I think I got to see them once, and here you are now drumming in the band. How does that feel for somebody who would have grown up, enjoyed the music, and are now actually part of this being?
Sure, yeah. I grew up with this "don't meet your heroes" idea. And I think that's all.
How's it working out for you?
That's all changed. Just our South Africanness is there's something so huge there that a hero of if you're looking up to South African band in the late 90s, early 2000s, growing up wanting to become a musician, it is such an incredible thing because they're all such nice guys,
except that one guy.
So it's really easy, and we're a small industry compared to what we grew up with in our heads, which is like the American music market or British or European, whatever you listen to. So for me, it was a dream come true, but at the same time, we are part of an unfolding story. So I realize I'm part of that as an audience member, and I don't know if you remember an article called the Blue Light Brigade or something like that. When social media, when people started filming gigs, it was like obviously New York.
Oh, was it a new thing then? Like it was like someone wrote an article about it.
And so it brings up this sort of ontologically, this like idea of like, well, is the audience member really there if they're filming the whole gig?
Ooh.
And this was, I mean, I didn't have cell phones when I was like fanboying 363 back in 2000. So it's quite an interesting experience to see how it's going to be received now. I think it's quite a different scene, but back then it was almost like just the best, biggest sound. It was the closest thing that we could have got to the Police, Sting and the Police, and a bit of U2.
Yeah, definitely a bit of U2 thrown in there.
Because it was a big old noise, huh?
Proper.
Here we go! 1, 2. I'm someone who cut up again. Hey! I'm someone unshakable. I've seen the earth spin around. Now I understand. They used to keep you on the outside. Now you're the only survivor. You have spoken with the angels. Now your face still shines, just like mine. We're the glorious ones.
He likes to make
Check
a lot
out
of noise.
Chufty looked at that. He was just
But
like,
the songs,
I'm
Yeah,
chuffed
it
about
was.
that. Amazon 11, brother.
oh yeah.
I mean, the songs are huge. As a songwriter, it's such a privilege if you leave the room and that your song is still sung. And I think that's happened to John way more than it has happened to me as a songwriter. So it's just great to learn that craft and learn from him, but also the humility that it takes to kind of grow in that songwriting process.
Well, there's not many people as humble as I am. You know,
Yes, I know.
it's very, very, very humble. In fact, probably the most humble in the world, actually.
This is the cake
I
podcast.
don't want to
In
say who
the
he's competing
world.
with now. Yeah.
Jeremy Clarkson moment in the world.
I'll be right back.
Do you see, and I mean, I guess this is a question for anybody watching or listening to this. It would be, what's down the line with the band? Obviously, you've got a few, you got tonight, and I'm guessing a few other shows lined up. Where to from there? Is it going to be recording? Is it the idea of putting some new stuff down and this rebirth, this redefinition of what 363 is in 2025? Do you foresee a
There
situation
we
where
say
you're playing?
the resurrection.
I see what you did there, Jono.
I've
A
been
new
sitting
s-
on that for
A
a
new
while.
sapling.
A new
New
sapling.
sapling. Recycled Christmas tree.
Oh my!
I'm pining for the next album.
Oh my God!
Knock, knock. Who's there, Dad? Go away, Dad.
I'm planning. Did you just say that?
I did.
That was
I did.
spectacular.
I did.
So,
Sounds
John,
like a good
what are you going to be doing?
So this thing
Knock on wood.
started a year ago, and the plan was to do just to get on, find the stage and play the songs. There was no strategy. We rehearsed for a year, right? But as we rehearsed and it started sounding good, we thought maybe we should play on a slightly bigger stage than just the local something. And then plans, in other words, plans grow and transform as they do, right? I started writing again, specifically for Tree, which I haven't done for 20 years, right? So that was interesting. And now people are saying, well, we'd love to hear some new material. Then I go, well, I happen to have the songs. So now we're talking of doing a new single, a new album, playing more and more stages. So it's grown beyond the initial idea of 2024. I feel like it's really easy to make the mistake of planning way in advance and having huge ideas. So there's a tension between dreaming big,
Sure.
and being realistic. I'd love to see this go as far as it can go. It went really far for the first time around, but it didn't go far enough for me. And I always felt there was unfinished business somewhere.
I guess at the beginning of our conversation, you talked about Tree as a legacy thing. And I guess that's the difference. That's the choice that you and the group have. Is it a legacy thing where you
Well,
revisit your album's past?
Yeah.
Or is it something that you say that's part of it, but there's a new chapter unfolding?
What I
in
found
terms of you?
interesting in the last few months singing these songs, we talked about it, the songs feel new again. They don't feel like I'm covering Tree songs, which is very interesting as a writer. They don't feel like some things I wrote 20 years ago and I'm cute, you know. Because lyrically they are about eternal things, and spiritually and musically they come from hopefully most of them, all of them, come from a really pure place. And so when you play them, you don't feel like you're just covering a rock song. They feel refreshed, you know. So that's interesting. You can play old songs like that all the time and they feel brand new again, which is something I didn't anticipate. And
I'd
then-
like to jump in for a second here and remind you of something that you said to me after that gig here. Right at the back end of everything, I think the only people left was sort of the Alma gang and Relitze and you. And you just looked at me and you had this big sort of sparkle in your eye and you're like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I forgot, and I'm doing it again, you know. And you would like, it was such a moment of I suppose, recognition of your place in the world, and I suppose remembering all that time past and reassurance of who you are and what you're about. And probably a sense of relief as well that you'd come back around to doing this thing that you know, that is you and made you and that you've been about, and it's been about you for your whole life.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and you've come back around in this massive circle.
Yeah.
And I mean, just between you and me, mate, like, you're excited again.
I am.
And that's huge.
It is because, like you touched on, I think all of us at this table and everyone in the world has one thing that they were born for, whatever that is. And the quest of life is to find that thing. Right? For me, this is it. That the trick in this thing, though, is that it can get distracting because it's music. It can be popular, and popularity is distracting. It's not about whether it's popular or not. I've just got to do this, no matter who's listening. It was popular before, and there's no guarantee it'll be popular again. But I'm going to do it anyway. It's that thing.
Yep.
Right. And I think whatever we do, we've got to find that thing that we literally cannot stop doing.
Yeah.
This is it for me.
How did you feel at the end of that show?
I felt, like Jono said, I felt relieved. I felt excited and part of something that was meaningful. I felt like I wasn't just entertaining people, because that's not really what I feel like I was ever really meant to do. Right? I just felt relieved to be doing something that I was. I think that feeling. There's an age-old story of the runner in Chariots of Fire. That movie was based on Eric Liddell, and he was asked what it felt like to run. Remember that?
Yeah, it's a beautiful passage.
And he goes, he just feels the favor of God, God smiling on him when he runs. Not when he wins, which he did win anyway. It's not about the success of the race. It was the pure running. It was the joy for him.
I feel his pleasure.
That's what I feel often playing music. If it's playing with Jono or Tree, I felt it more with Tree because that's my where I belong. But playing music generally is, I feel the pleasure of just being made to do that in that moment. With Tree, it's enhanced more because I've written that song and whatever, you know. But either way, music's my running. And maybe you're the same. Maybe
it's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah. So that's why I feel at the end of a Tree gig, this exhilaration and then it mixed with real human fear. I hope it was good enough, you know.
Well, I don't think that we found too many people that night suggesting it wasn't.
We're only human, and we go, man, I've really missed up that third song and that fourth bar. There was a string that.
I saw you shooting Gus some terrible looks. It was as if you were like, it really wasn't working.
And then Gus was going,
old music.
I sang the wrong lyric. Right?
When in doubt, blame the drummer.
Always blame.
Use the other egg shaker.
Yeah.
Wrong egg.
Wrong key. Yeah.
The fourth member of Tree.
Yeah.
I think this is a really good place to leave it, because I know you guys have got sound check, and I know you've got a gig to look forward to and prep for that. But just from my side, to the two of you and Dion in his absence, it's fantastic to have 363 back. Really excited to see how 2025 unfolds for you.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you.
Really, fingers crossed for whether it's new music or whether it's turning up the guitars loud and going amplified, which I think was one of the things you were thinking about
in the Alma.
In the Alma. No, make sure what your conditions of establishment and your town planning scheme allow.
I'll just close the gate. Can't get the amp. I know what size amps he likes. Just close the gate.
To shut venues down.
But Jono, to you and the Alma team for the year, again, huge appreciation for what you do. Never forget how important this place is to the patrons. We appreciate what you do.
Did Alma end with 363 and start with 363 this year? Is that pretty much it?
I wish I could say yes.
Yes.
But I can't.
Yeah,
So
pretty
I
much.
won't.
Yeah.
Close as damn it.
It's a
Close
it's
Dam
a
is a good ending.
it's a special place, and we're
For sure.
glad to be part of the history finally. You know.
It's been really special, and to the Tree team, to Alma team, all the best. Good luck for the year, and
Yeah.
hopefully we revisit this in a few months' time. See how it's going.
If you can afford us, then.
Well, that's the problem.
Oh,
You see.
damn.
In the meantime, cheers to our watchers and listeners. Cheers.